first steps to create an Avalanche validator on AWS is to have a VPC. Here I'm using the company's VPC, which is already built, and I'm not going to go through that because that's out of the scope of this video. As a matter of fact, you need to also have the key pairs also associated to that so you can have a terminal access. So the key pairs has been created, and the VPC is also has been created. And here you can see the detail of the VPC and the IP range that it's been assigned to it, which we use 1024 subnet, and also the security group is necessary for the Avalanche particularly. And we created a security group, the minimum configuration that allows the 9651 ports and 9650 port to be open for Avalanche RPC and Avalanche protocol. And we need the 22 for SSH connection. Now, the AMI that we're going to use for this is actually, I didn't create an AMI, so I started from the scratch. We created an EC2 for this Avalanche, and the configuration of the EC2 that will be necessary for the Avalanche. We go by launching instance, and we choose the Ubuntu server 64-bit and the version 20. And we look for C large I think it was C5 large that was recommended by Avalanche to choose. So the C5 large has got 2 CPUs, 4 GB of RAM with EBS. So then we clicked on next, and in order to make it cheaper, we can actually request for a spot instance, and we put a value here for the spot instance as 0.8, and there's a recommended value by Avalanche. Which has got more decimal points into it that would make a slightly difference in the price, monthly price. That's it. So it's 0.085 USD, which gives you around $462 per year approximately. So 0.8 is actually very high. So 0.085, and we use a persistent request and stop interruption behavior. And the network we've created previously, and is FAB-IT solution VPC01. The subnet also we've created it, which is Avalanche EU Central. And the auto-assign public IP is disabled because we're going to use flexible IP, or whatever they call it in AWS, elastic IP. So the elastic IP, what it means is when you have a static IP and you assign it to it, and if your Avalanche server is a spot server, and if it changes the server to a cheaper version or swap it, you will lose your static IP that you have assigned to it. But with the elastic IP, what it does is it keeps the your static IP always the same, which I think it comes with a price. At the moment, we cannot assign as elastic IP because we haven't got the server yet. So we continue with the creation of the server. And the IAM role is FAB-IT solution admin we can use here. And we go to the next stage. So the recommended SDA space by Avalanche is okay, 40 gigabytes. So we choose 40 gigabyte for the space. And the IOPS 100-3000, I think, is what is recommended. 123,000, that's right. And we don't encrypt it. So now we are ready for the next stage. We're going to add a tag, name, and the value. In case you want to have more nodes, we call it AVAX-01. So we know it's an Avalanche server. Now the security group, it allows you to create a new one, but we have already created one, which is Avalanche Security Group that I've showed previously. We choose that and we can review. So in the review, you can see that we have chosen the Ubuntu server, version 20. It's a 64-bit. The instant type C5 large as recommended with 2 vCPUs, 4 gigabytes of memory. EBS only, which we have chosen. This is our security group inbound rules. And the instant details, you have all the network, subnet, EBS, and so on. And the spot option request 0.05 that we set up. You can see the subnet association here and the storage at last, which we chose 40 gigabytes, not encrypted, and the tags. So now we launch. And when you launch, then you can choose the key pair that we have already selected, which is FAB-IT Solutions AWS key. I acknowledge that I have access to the selected private key file, and as a matter of fact, we do. So if I go to my terminal, here you can see I created AWS machines. So in this particular script, I say for the Ubuntu and Red Hat, you have two different usernames to log in. The first one is Ubuntu at the IP that you associate with it, and the other one is EC2/user. So in this case, it's a Ubuntu. And it is looking at the IDRSA, which is over here. So that is the key, the private key that we're going to access the server with. So we acknowledge that and launch the instance. So now we can view instances. And you can see that it's already active. Now the next steps, we are going to actually access the instance and to be able to create our node, the Avalanche node for validation. For accessing the server, for installing the Avalanche software and building the validator, we need to have our keys, which SSH keys, which we have created before. We also need to create an internet gateway, which we have created here. And we have to update the routing tables that is connected or routed to the internet gateway and it's been active. Then we can create the elastic IP here and associate it with the IP address. So now we can see that this elastic IP has been associated with our EC2. Now if you remember, I've created this script that basically differentiates between the Ubuntu and Red Hat servers and connects to the AWS server. Depending on the server, you will have a different username for connection. So we run it. So we choose one as Ubuntu, and the associated IP, the elastic IP that we've just created as a public IP. And we press, and yes, we are in Ubuntu. As a next step, we make sure that we have the newest operating system and install the new packages. And we do a reboot at the end of it. I've copied and pasted the 3 commands. It was pretty fast, but basically that is what it is doing right now. And after reboots, we will lose connection, which means we have to reconnect to the server again. But the state can be checked in the EC2 state, which is running right now. And the next step after that will be to be able to get the newest Avalanche code, which the code is already described here. I'm wondering why they didn't do a git pull. Instead we have latest. So I assume this is the binary. Actually, no, it's on the GitHub. So okay, so the last command that was executed was upgrade and update. So the reboot was not issued, so we do a reboot now. I see. Okay, so we're here, we've lost connection to the server, but here we can check the server. Okay, that was a very fast reboot, so we try to reconnect now. Okay, we're back in. So all the software has been updated. We will now pull the Avalanche code. Okay, we can see that the tar.gz was downloaded. We create a directory for installation. And we extract it and remove it. Right. Now we have to make the service automated. And we are going to copy and paste this here. And we have to change the public IP. To this one. So all that seems right. We start the server. Now we check the status of the server. It's a bit too early at the moment, but we can check if it is bootstrapped. And it's false at the moment, you can see here. So that is going to take a while. So I pause the video for now. While we were waiting, I created 3 scripts, which is a bootstrap info.shell, node-id.shell, and server status.shell. So if I want to know the server status, we can run that. For node ID, which we're going to have a quick look at that. That's the first API. Second API. And that's basically the Linux status systemctl system command to find out what the state of the servers are. Now, locally on the Mac, also I've created the same scripts, except I've changed the IP address. So you can see it's the same API, and here I put the public IP, and you can see that it's been bootstrapped now. I hope this was useful and will help you to create your Avalanche validator easily. And thank you for your attention.